Talk about trust issues with AI. What are leaders not doing to navigate disruption?
Yeah. So on the one hand, we're already experiencing and at the sharp end of the weaponization of information. So for example, in America, I think some recent surveys basically that have come out suggest that around 80% of Americans don't trust the information on some of the social media networks. Like for example, X, I think it's about 60% on Facebook, and so on and so forth. So from an information perspective, we're already living in a compromised environment. Now, that affects the truth on the one hand, because it's much harder for us to understand what is true, but it's also much harder for us to then see a piece of information and validate that it's true. Because let's say, for example, we take the news. If you're on a social media platform and you see a piece of information that is pretending to be the news, there's a new war that's erupted. How do you, either as an organization or as an individual, validate that is true and accurate? Now, ordinarily, if it's the news, I use the news as a simple example because it used to be easy. You would turn to Fox or CNN or the BBC or France 24 or maybe Al Jazeera or whatever it happened to be. And if the BBC said a war has broken out here, then you'd say, okay, that is probably accurate information then. However, a lot of the state-sponsored actors over the years have been actively trying to tear down established, should we say, organizations and institutions that we would normally turn to validate information that we see. So we see this with the CDC, we see this with attacks against the World Health Organization and so on and so forth. So the institutions that we would ordinarily turn to as individuals and businesses to try to assess and ascertain whether a piece of information was factual are increasingly being undermined themselves. So we have that. Secondly, I see these state-sponsored actors, as well as invested individuals who have an agenda, who have their own agenda for whatever particular reasons, are now trying to position themselves as the source of the truth. We see this especially in America. Increasingly, who do you trust? Do you trust the social media influencer who has 100 million followers, who keeps trying to show you why the regular news networks are biased and wrong and how they are hiding an agenda, etc., etc.?